Parcells, and welcome to part 2 of Colonial Opposition to the Crown. This is about the Stamp Act crisis. And the Stamp Act is essentially a tax or law created by Grenville due to the fact that the original Sugar Act was not effective because he was unable to acquire actual English money, pounds or so forth. So he wanted to create a new tax that could possibly get real English money collected. Conceptually, what Grenville thinks here is that if he taxes the wealthy individuals in the colonies, that they would be more inclined to have actual English money. So what did the wealthy people use? Well, they tended to use paper or printed materials because they were the ones that could read, could write, and had materials that were printed. So he attempts to tax them. What he didn't bargain for, though, is that these wealthier individuals are also very much aware of their rights, dating back to the English Bill of Rights of 1689. And the House of Burgesses in Virginia would actually create a Stamp Act Congress. And this was led by Patrick Henry, seen down here in the lower right. And Patrick Henry will ultimately lead the House of Burgesses in petitioning the king in Parliament in protest to this tax. Now, the basis of their protest was that they were being taxed without representation. And this goes back to the argument we saw in part 1, which is this idea of virtual representation, it being unfair. They don't have representation in the Parliament. Well, given all of this, we also have an upbringing going on up in Boston with the Sons of Liberty. And rather than going through the legal parameters of petitioning, the Sons of Liberty tended to take the law into their own hands. Seen over here in the right, this secret organization here known as the Sons of Liberty tended to scare the tax collectors rather than petition the king. And here you see a painting of them being tarred and feathered. And the Sons of Liberty, because of their illegal acts, were a secret organization. The bottom line is that Grenville was getting a great deal of problems from the colonists, so much so that the Parliament and the king decided to replace him with a new prime minister by the name of Lord Rockingham, a member of the House of Lords. His first act as prime minister was to, as it says here, repeal or get rid of the Stamp Act, thinking this would make everybody happy. Immediately, his first act is to create a law known as the Declaratory Act. And this Declaratory Act does just this. It declares that Parliament had the right to make laws in all cases whatsoever over the colonies. And essentially, this is only going to make them even more upset because it flies in the face, once again, of their rights as Englishmen. Therefore, he immediately is going to be replaced by a new prime minister named William Pitt. And William Pitt will actually be very, very well liked by the colonists. The reason that William Pitt was so well liked by the colonists was due to his political party affiliation. This goes back to Parliament. And what we mean by political party is we're talking about where his belief system is. And political parties played a huge part in the Parliament. And we had two parties. We had the Tory party and the Whig party. The Tory party was known as the King's party. They always tended to agree with the king. The Whig party, however, was the oppositional party. And one of their leaders, seen here, is a man by the name of Edmund Burke. Well, William Pitt and Edmund Burke were close friends, both of them Whigs. So they were part of this oppositional party that tended to question the king, and question the king quite often. And this is why they end up with the title Whig. Whigs were worn by individuals of extreme wealth to show off that they were very wealthy. And so this was a way of sort of perhaps identifying that they could be with the commoners and be of the same opinion. So having someone like Pitt take over is a good thing for the colonists. Pitt, however, is suffering from poor health. And so, due to this, he is going to appoint a friend of his by the name of Charles Townshend to be what we call the Chancellor of the Exchequer. This would be like Secretary of the Treasury here in the United States today. And he would be responsible for overseeing that the colonists would partake in paying off some of their debt. Now, seen here, the Townshend Acts, named after the Exchequer, were imposed in 1767, and you'll notice here that the colonists, they really didn't have too much of a problem with these taxes, and these are not new taxes, they're just divvied up in a little different manner. There are taxes placed on the wealthy, which are glass and paper, and then there's also taxes placed on everyone, lead and tea. Lead is used for musket balls or bullets, but also they had plates and eating utensils made of lead. And of course, tea was a way of hiding the bad taste of well water and so forth. Now, glass and paper, paper we've already seen for the wealthy, but glass, this was very expensive, and most people didn't have glassware or glass in their windows. So these were taxes on both the wealthy and on everyone. Now, the bottom line is, these taxes were imposed in 1767, and they would remain for quite some time until until we'll see another incident that shows dissatisfaction. The reign of Townshend was relatively peaceful in the American colonies. However, he will tragically pass away in September of 1767, and that's when Lord North will become, seen here, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer. But it's not his appointment that gets people all that upset in the American colonies. It's going to be the creation of a new position in Parliament known as Secretariat of the State. This would be like our Secretary of State today, which is in charge of foreign affairs. And this position is going to be appointed to Lord Hillsborough, and Lord Hillsborough is in the House of Lords, but it's the position itself, as seen here, which is upsetting to them, because this new position makes for them to have ultimate power in the American colonies, one person. And this is very upsetting to the American colonies. And it was also upsetting to Pitt. And as you'll notice here, the last line of this says that Pitt was so opposed to this that he ends up resigning his position as Prime Minister. Now, there's one thing that I'd like for us to understand and know. In the American colonies, not every person was what we call a patriot or a loyalist. As a matter of fact, the American colonies were very split on this. We had loyalists or Tories. These were people that remained loyal to the king and were synonymous with the political party there known as Tories. But we also had patriots, and the patriots were Whigs, and they were sympathizers with that political party. So you have all of these varying groups, but there's a large contingent also of individuals that were what we call neutral. And by neutral, what we mean is they are neither of these. So really, when we think about it, the entire American colonies were split 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. But it's this neutral group that needs to be inspired to choose a side. And it's going to be the patriots, the Sons of Liberty, that are going to try and influence this group to side with them. The event that probably gets a great deal of attention is going to be known as the Boston Massacre. But what we're going to do here is I want us to investigate this idea of massacre. Now, what happens here with this event is that on the 2nd of March in 1770, we will have 5 colonists die. 3 died immediately, 2 die later of their wounds. Probably most famously is this gentleman here, Crispus Attucks, a very popular black American that lost his life here at this Boston Massacre. But what I want us to understand here is, was it really a massacre? How does it get this title, and for what reason? Now, Lord North is in charge at this time, and he really doesn't do anything wrong. The Boston Massacre is really a culmination of many events over many years, and this event takes place, and we really don't know exactly what happened, but due to the fact that we have records of this time, we do know that people got upset. People went to the Massachusetts legislation building seen here in the picture, and they were protesting. And a group of British troops were sent out to try and get this group to go home. Accidentally, shots were fired and people died. Now, when we think of massacre and the root word of it is mass. Is this a mass killing of individuals? Not so much. The other thing is these colonists were throwing either snowballs or shells or things at the troops, which may have actually made them accidentally fire. The bottom line is this event was blown out of proportion. It was used to try and influence that 1/3 that we talked about that's neutral, to try and get them to sympathize with the individuals known as the Sons of Liberty or the Patriots. And this was done because they owned the newspapers, and they then could publish what they wanted about this event. And this event will gain a great deal of sympathy from that 1/3 that was neutral. Of the Boston Massacre, John Adams, seen up here at the top, he will defend the soldiers that had killed the American colonists, and he will do so successfully. The 5 colonists that died, it will be deemed that it was a accidental incident and that nobody will go to prison. Now, given this, John Adams is obviously the cousin of Sam Adams, the leader of the Sons of Liberty, and the key to the entire incident was to show that the American government and our judicial system actually works, can free individuals and deem them innocent even when they have slain or killed American colonists like Crispus Attucks. Now, given all of this, we also have, as a result, in April of 1770, Lord North decides, well, maybe the Boston Massacre was due to the fact that people were upset with taxes again, which was part of it, but not all of it. Bottom line is he repeals the Townshend Acts in an effort to appease the American colonists. But at this point, it is far out of reach. The American colonists are upset not just with taxation, but just with their rights being violated. And this Boston Massacre was a culmination of all of these kinds of things that have been going on for years.